So I'm going to move on to the 5-point plot structure. And I pulled this right out of the writer's brainstorming kit. This is my own copy of my book, hence the chewed corner. I don't remember how that happened. And this is a book by Pam McCutcheon and Michael Waite. And I found it really, really simple. And for the first time, I started understanding story in a simpler way. So whereas the 3-act structure, I think, is wonderful for getting a broad sweep of your story, this actually starts to wrap in your character arc. And I'm going to go into each aspect here. So the 5-point plot structure, she's adapted it from a few things. They've adapted it from the hero's journey, and they borrowed also from another wonderful story structure person, mostly in screenplay, which is Sid Field. So they start with the ordinary world. So this is the moment before the change. We need a glimpse of the life of our main character before everything changes. So we have an understanding of the importance of the change's impact. So I'm going to use Star Wars again for this example, and I'm going to explain each piece, and then I'm going to give you where it is in the story in Star Wars. And this is Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, which is now its new title. So, this is the moment when we have Luke on his uncle's farm in Tatooine, and he's kind of complaining about his work and why can't he go and be like the other boys, and how he has to get up early. And so we just get this sense of here's a young man wanting more, but not being able to have it and working on this farm. So that's ordinary world. And then there's going to be a trigger event, and you're going to start to see parallels between what Bonnie shared and what I'm about to share. So a trigger event is usually an external event that's going to yank the main character out of their ordinary world and send him or her in an unusual and unexpected direction. This is where, when we think of story, this is where we think, oh, now the story has begun. And it's usually very close to the beginning. In modern storytelling, often the ordinary world is very brief. In fiction, it might just be a few paragraphs before we start right into this trigger event. And it also establishes the character's goal, what it is they truly want, whereas we hinted at Luke's goal in the ordinary world. Now with trigger event, we start to see what it is he truly wants, what is motivating him, and what are the things that are going to be stopping him, what are the conflicts. And for the trigger event in Star Wars, in my opinion, is when the aunt and uncle get killed. This is, nothing will ever be the same for Luke again. He joins forces with Obi-Wan Kenobi to avenge his family, and by now he's seen the message about Princess Leia, and he wants to go after her. So for me, the trigger event is the thing that really sets everything in motion in a big way, and it's different. We'll contrast this later, but I think it's different than the inciting incident. So the next one is the change of plans. This is when, very similar to some things Bonnie said, this is when something, usually an external something, sends the character off in a new direction. Longer stories can have many change of plans, and you'll see that it will be a continual shift of challenges that will make the hero choose different and new steps. Sometimes by the villain, sometimes they'll be generated by the hero, and sometimes by the villain. And often this part of the story, the stakes will get higher. So this is, I see this in Star Wars as there's reoccurring changes happening in Star Wars. But the biggest one is when Luke and his friends get captured by the Death Star and thrown into the trash, or they jump into the trash compactor to escape. And his focus has become, he has to escape his captors and help his friends. D, the black moment. This is where all is lost. Everything is about to go horribly wrong. The protagonist is about to lose everything she's worked for, and it looks like the villain will triumph. And it's usually toward the end of the story, or sometimes there's an accumulation of things that have led to this moment, but the black moment is really that one moment where we as the readers are wondering, how are they going to get out of this mess? And it's in Star Wars, it's when several fighters have tried and failed to destroy the Death Star, and there's only a few minutes before the Death Star annihilates the rebel base, and Darth Vader is on Luke's tail, locked onto him. So everything is going against our hero and his friends. And then finally, the resolution. This is after the black moment. The main character makes a decision or has an epiphany that reveals the best course of action. And as a result, the character is rewarded and the story ends. So in Star Wars, it's when Han Solo swoops in, distracts Vader, and then Luke decides to trust the Force. So that's an internal decision he makes. And then he's able to destroy the Death Star and save the Rebel Alliance. So the 5-point plot structure, I think, is really great if you want to sketch out a story. You're not sure if it's a good idea, and so you're going to test it out, and you can run it through these 5 points and see if it works for you. I often use it just to see if I have enough content. If I can think of, I usually can think of, okay, what's the ordinary world? What's the trigger event that's going to really shift everything for my main character? And how about change of plans? Can I come up with some things that are going to make things worse for my hero? And black moment, can I really push my hero up against a moment where all is lost? And then resolution, getting an inkling of what that could look like. This helps me when I'm in the brainstorming phase and just want to get a sense of a whole. It's also great if you have a character who's going to be forced to change because of external events, and you just want to test it out in this idea. So I would say the 5-point plot structure is really great if you want to be in a brainstorming mode, in a sketch mode. And I think I've internalized a lot of these things, but what's really important for me, I notice, is focusing on the trigger event. What changes things irrevocably for my hero? You may find this plot structure is a simple way to approach looking at your story from a macro level. So that's all I'm going to say about the 5-point plot structure. I'm going to dive now into